Hi and welcome. This is our mental health talk here at the MCBC at our church. And my name is Ken. I'm one of the pastors here at this church. And I have my guest with me, Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, why don't you go and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm a registered clinical psychologist in the province of Ontario.
Great. And we're just having our conversation here to talk about mental health, various aspects of it. And again, we want to just help encourage a conversation to break the stigma of silence. So before we go any farther, I'm going to invite Elizabeth to just give us a disclaimer here at this point.
Perfect. Yep. And I'm just going to read this off. Okay. So this video is for information only, and it's not psychotherapy. All statements or information included in this video is not intended, it is intended for only informational and educational purposes and should not be considered psychotherapy or any form of treatment. The information included in this video is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological, psychiatric, or medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have any medical questions, please seek the advice of your family physician or another medical doctor. Should you have any questions regarding psychological concerns, please talk to a qualified mental health provider. If you think you are in need of immediate assistance, please call 911 or visit your local hospital emergency room. If you are in distress or need emotional support, please access the mental health crisis hotline listed in your local phone book's government pages. I know we're also including 24-hour crisis lines for Toronto and the Greater Toronto area in the description box below.
Great. So today we're going to delve into a difficult subject, but it's one that is very real. We're talking about depression. And so what is depression? So Elizabeth, why don't you give us some ideas and understanding about what is depression and what is kind of that clinical threshold that we get to that we can acknowledge and understand sort of more about depression?
Definitely. I mean, first of all, I do want to differentiate between, people saying to their friends, oh, I'm depressed, right? Meaning, oh, I feel quite sad or down or gloomy. But there is quite a difference between feeling sad and that clinical threshold, right? And so there's various depressive disorders, right? But I think what's quite common across folks is people really struggle with feeling sad or empty or irritable. And other signs or symptoms can be feeling hopeless or worthless and guilty. People might have issues with their appetite and their sleep. They also, sometimes they really struggle to get out of bed, low energy. And a lot of people, they lose interest in, things that they usually, that they used to enjoy.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of different, clinical depression things, such as postpartum depression to manic depression, all these various forms. What are some of the things that would help us as we observe ourselves or observe others, whether they're children or teens, seniors, adults? What are some indicators that we can kind of be on the watch for?
Mm-hmm. I think ultimately, if whether it's yourself or your loved ones, you notice they're really struggling, they're having a really hard time, whether it's, they're feeling really down and low, perhaps they're having suicidal thoughts. But I think if, whatever is bothering them, if it's so significant that it's hindering their ability to go about their daily life, then it's quite important to perhaps talk to that person and also to connect with a qualified mental health professional. In terms of specific signs, I think it can look quite, just because there's such a wide array of different signs, it can look kind of different person to person. Okay, but everything that I just kind of mentioned previously, but also for children might appear more as being irritable or throwing tantrums or having outbursts as opposed to feeling sad.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think the hard part sometimes is that a lot of times we interchange the word sadness and depression. So that's maybe something we should be a little more mindful of, as you started out telling us. I think another two words that kind of go with the word depression and suicide. I think a lot of times we put those two words together. How are, what is like suicide, and does depression always mean suicide? How can we understand these two words?
Mm-hmm. So not necessarily, right? People who are struggling with depression doesn't mean that they automatically struggle with suicidal thoughts. Right? Now, suicide, I think for a lot of people who struggle with those thoughts, people might think, oh, they're struggling between choosing life or death. Okay, but for a lot of these people, it's more about they're struggling with feeling pain, right? They're in such distress, and it's been unrelenting, and they're getting quite tired, and so I think suicide, it's almost as if this is my only way to get relief.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, with that, what about the aspects of self-harm? And does that always mean someone wants to die? So, one general idea of self-harm is cutting.
Mm-hmm.
So, does that also equal towards suicide or wanting to die?
I think it's important for me to differentiate between a suicide attempt by cutting and non-suicidal self-harm. Right. So self-harming, it is that deliberate harming of oneself, including cutting or burning or whatnot. But the intent is not to die by suicide.
So, why do people do self-harm then?
Mm-hmm. There's not one definite, straightforward answer. It's quite complex. And according to some research, some people who do self-harm, um, it might be a way to try to manage really intense negative emotions. And in some other research, some adolescents reported that it was a way to punish themselves, or to kind of distract them away from other emotional pain. So yeah, the reasons can be really different and varied.
Right, so this is a very challenging topic, and there's actually a lot of different areas to cover, but we're only scratching the surface here.
Mm-hmm.
What are some maybe final thoughts or things that we can just take away from this? A couple of things that would be, the key takeaways when we talk about depression, or if we talk about suicide, or if we talk about self-harm.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to recognize your own limitations, right? If someone is coming to you and they're confiding in you about, they're feeling depressed and they're having suicidal thoughts, yes, you can be their support, but also recognize when it's time to uh, connect them with a professional who is skilled and has training to help these individuals who struggle with this, right? Yes, and I do want to also make note that if, again, someone comes to you and they call you and they say, tonight I'm going to do it finally, and you really believe that they're going to harm themselves, I would encourage anyone to call 911 and make sure that that person gets some help.
Is there another place to reach out other than 911? Like, what are some other options?
You can definitely, reach out to the 24-hour distress lines, the crisis lines.
Okay.
I believe the Gerstein Crisis Center, I think they have an actual team, a crisis team, that does come out and help people in that kind of situation when the danger is imminent.
Right. You mentioned like the idea of intent, and if someone calls you up, oftentimes in the professional world, we're told to, don't even take a chance, call 911 or get them to an emergency room. Can you just kind of explain a little bit more about imminent, intent, all that kind of stuff that we can just take from this?
For sure, yes. So in my head, I kind of visualize three levels, right? There's someone who has suicidal thoughts, right? And then the next step of severity would be they have these thoughts, and also they're coming up with some kind of plan of suicide. And then that third level, it's, the thoughts, the plan, and then now they have the actual, that intent, right? So it's that, okay, yes, I am going to carry out this plan. right? And so, imminent harm would be you think that this person is going to carry out their plan right away. Okay. Now, these 3 stages, it can be really difficult to kind of figure out, if someone's just calling you or a family member is telling you about what's been going on with them. And so I think, again, that's why it's important to, if you suspect or think that, oh gosh, this is, this can be a very, very serious situation, it's important to not just kind of carry that by yourself, but to make sure that other people are aware. I think the more people are aware, the better, right? And perhaps including, again, a trained professional, whether that's a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, psychologist, psychotherapist, social worker.
All right, great. Thank you again. This has been our talk on the topic of depression. At our church, we hope that, again, these discussion points are just really scratching the surface, and they really just open up dialogue and safe spaces to have conversations as well. If you're looking for a mental health support group, our church is open to doing that. We already have one group underway, and if you wanted to join a group, you can always reach out to us. So thank you, Elizabeth, for doing this. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we hope, again, if this is something helpful for you or for someone you know, go ahead and share this video with them. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.